Well, for Disney, it's been a year of flop after fail, after bomb, after dud, after I'm running out of vocabulary to describe all of the box office woes the Walt Disney Company has suffered in 2023, now seemingly turning in their seventh flop of the year. And, well, you know what they say. You can wish in one hand and crap in the other and see which one you fill first. Break out the toilet paper, Disney. Renegade Online. Well, folks, welcome back. Another great day here at Valiant Renegade. It's good to see everybody out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video, not yet subscribed to this channel, please take a moment and turn that little red subscribe button to gray. Hit that like button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. Make sure to join us this afternoon, Sunday, November 26th at 6 p.m. Eastern, right here for the live show. Bad weekends at the box office seems to be the recurring theme in 2023 for the Walt Disney Company, and Wish is no different. This just out from Deadline magazine and Anthony D'Alessandro, Songbirds and Snakes. That's the Hunger Games prequel, reigns supreme over Thanksgiving stretch with a $42 million 5-day, and Napoleon steps on Disney's Wish with $32+ million. Again, this is just the domestic numbers for the box office. So speaking of the Hunger Games, this movie is now set to breach that $200 million global mark, something that a lot of folks had questions about whether or not would happen when this movie opened, but it seemed to have legged out so far pretty well. And this is a movie that Songbirds and Snakes won in its second weekend. It beat out Napoleon. It beat out Wish, which is actually a bit of a surprise considering these two new movies that usually come out during the Thanksgiving Day frame, well, that's usually the ones that are going to win the weekend, but not so this year. The Hunger Games prequel comes with a roughly $100 million production budget from Lionsgate, something much more well-controlled than, say, a Disney feature. We'll talk about The Marvels in a minute, which, as a reminder, came with a $300 million production budget. Yeah, you could have made 12 copies of Five Nights at Freddy's for what they made The Marvels for. You could have made 3 copies of Songbirds and Snakes for what they made The Marvels for. So this movie has a much lower hill to hurdle itself over. If it gets to somewhere around $400 million globally, it's probably broken even. But then again, this is Lionsgate, who still has very lucrative third-party contracts out there for post-theatrical distribution, which they pick up a good bit of money on the back end. I think at the end of the day, Lionsgate is going to be just fine with this, even if it's not going to turn in the financial result that they were hoping for. Also coming in on its second weekend is Trolls Band Together, $145 million. Again, not a great box office. It's a kids movie. It should be doing a little bit better, but then again, this may continue to leg out and just kind of hang around for the next several weeks as we come into the Christmas holidays. And this movie had about a $100 million or less budget attached to it. So this should not be a big problem for Universal, which I'll remind folks again, even if they just clear the break-even hurdle at the theaters or even lose some money at the theaters, Universal, because this is a DreamWorks picture, still has a lucrative deal with Netflix for all their animated features. That contract is worth about $1 billion+ over the course of a few years. So basically, at the end of the day, Netflix is paying for a lot of films to be produced like Trolls. Then we come to Napoleon, that is distributed by Sony, but a movie that was effectively turnkey produced by Apple. Just like Killers of the Flower Moon, the Martin Scorsese movie that came out just in the last month or two, this is another one of these Apple vanity projects to one extent or another. Apple is shelling out $200 million, what seem to be turnkey fees to people like Ridley Scott and Martin Scorsese to not only produce the film, but also to pay them all the back ends up front for putting it on Apple TV, which is what these movies are ultimately made for. But Apple started realizing a while ago, instead of just throwing stuff directly onto Apple TV, why don't we put it in theaters for 30 days or so that they become eligible for major awards like the Oscars? And that's exactly what they've done here with Napoleon and Killers of the Flower Moon. I don't think either of these movies actually cost the reported $200 million production budgets that are floating out there. I think that's just what Apple paid as a one-time fee to make these movies in-house products to get onto streaming. But to be fair, it seems unlikely that either of these movies, Killers of the Flower Moon or Napoleon, are going to turn a profit at the box office. But then again, I don't think that was Apple's design to begin with. Then, of course, there's the continued hot mess of The Marvels, one of the biggest Disney flops of the year. And that's saying something when they seem to have 7 others so far in 2023. This may wind up well being the worst, considering a roughly $300 million price tag net, we think, after film tax credits because of all the reshoots that came in after the most recent financial reporting, as cited by Caroline Reed at Forbes magazine. Right now, this movie, through its 3rd weekend, only stands at $187 million globally. So yes, the projection of a $300 million loss on this latest MCU disaster stands. But let's get to the real mess of the week, and that is Wish, looking at $31.7 million. This is a 5-day open for a $200 million major Walt Disney Animation Studios picture. This is horrible. From Deadline magazine, as far as the withering of Wish, it's no surprise that CEO Bob Iger said days before the movie's opening during an earnings call that the studio, quote, lost some focus when it comes to the quality of their pictures. They're used to winning on both fronts with critics and audiences, and the $175 to $200 million production of Wish is not without sour reviews, even with an A- cinema score from audiences. And if you've been watching us the past few months, you've heard us talk about some of the allegations surrounding places like Rotten Tomatoes, where some of the all critics were allegedly getting comped for their reviews. Now, we can't say for sure by whom, but we can take our guesses based on past allegations. But even the all critics score stands at a horrible 50% for this major $200 million Disney animated feature film. And if we click into top critics, the trends seem to continue to hold that we started noticing several films ago. And that is that top critics are coming in fairly consistently around 15 to 20% on these Disney films under the all critics score. Top critics score now at 32% for this movie. But let me show you something that's even more striking that shows a complete lack of interest in this film. Notice the audience score of 81%, and also understand that we are 5 full days into this movie's release, not including even Tuesday night previews, and we are only still at 500 plus verified ratings. A Disney film that came out in the Thanksgiving frame just a few years ago by now would probably have well over 1,000 plus verified ratings in that box. But this just tells me that it's not about people liking this movie or not liking this movie, or how many bots may be included in that 81%. It's Disney. There's probably a fair bit, but it's about the complete lack of reviews at this point for this film, which is rather striking. We saw the same thing a couple of weeks ago with The Marvels on Rotten Tomatoes scores, where even after several days, it hadn't crossed the 500 verified ratings threshold. That seems to indicate pretty strongly that people have really checked out of the Disney brand. Back to Deadline, when we start hearing things about the lackluster summer pick Elemental being one of the biggest movies on Disney+, it's clear the Mouse House is in competition with itself. On the upside, theatrical boosts the downstream potential, but simultaneously, if the movie looks same old, then families aren't rushing out to it. They'll wait for it on Disney+. Even though Disney executed the best D-Day marketing blitzkrieg during an actor strike with Wish, with promotional partners like McDonald's, Neiman Marcus, Verizon, Cheerios, the most viewed Disney trailer on TikTok in the first 24 hours, and synergies on FX Freeform, Disney Plus, and ABC, with the latter's Dancing with the Stars, Disney 100 night kicking off a Wish sweepstakes, nobody is rushing en masse to go see it. And that's twofold. They have seen this plug-and-play princess movie before with the silly sidekicks, a talking goat and a puffy star, and they can wait for this. And that continues to be the hallmark problem with Disney that we continue to bring up, and that is that there is really little to no originality in Disney anymore. They are no longer the great storytellers that they once claimed to be. At least it's been a very long time since we've had that level of consistency. Disney just keeps making the same movies over and over again with the same excessively bloated budgets, and if anything, they seem to keep getting bigger. And unlike their competition down the street at Comcast Universal and things like Trolls, Disney's refusal to license these films out after they leave the theaters to third parties like Amazon and Netflix are only compounding the situation. It doesn't count, at least not in reality, in terms of cash flows, positive return on investment, or certainly to stockholders, when Disney is simply writing itself a check from the Disney Plus credit card to pay for the streaming rights to its own films. Go the universal route, Disney. Split the pay one window and collect some big checks from places like Netflix and Amazon, and maybe we won't be having these conversations in the same manner anymore. But Bob Iger is stubborn and wants to keep the core content exclusively on Disney Plus, and all that has done is drive up the debt, drive up the losses, and make Disney Plus a virtually untenable profit center. There's even some places in Wall Street now that are starting to question, even if Disney Plus becomes profitable, how profitable is it really going to be? They're starting to question the long-term viability of what that is actually going to look like even 5 or 10 years from now. Is it really going to be a major revenue driver for the House of Mouse, or is it just going to be a graveyard for second and third-rate films? Now, it is possible that Wish could surprise, something like what Elemental did over the summer, and really start to leg out as we approach the Christmas holidays in a few weeks, but I just don't seem to think that's going to happen. See, Elemental was over the summer. You had a consistent block of kids being off of school for weeks, months on end. You don't really have that here. You have short bursts where this movie can either hit or fail, and right now it looks like it's headed solidly for a fail, and I think Disney knows this. The interest simply is not there. This shouldn't be the weekend's headline right now, with Napoleon conquering an $80 million global bow, with Wish coming into $49 million. These two movies have completely different audiences. There should be no demographic overlap, and I'm sure there isn't. But this idea that people just simply don't want to go back to theaters yet, I think is bupkis. They're going to go back for the right films. We continue to say, look at Avatar 2. Look at Spider-Man No Way Home. Look at things like Super Mario Brothers, Barbie, and even Oppenheimer that came out of the blue. There have been a lot of big successes in the past 12 to 18 months that do show that audiences are more than willing to get back onto the big screen to see the films they want to see. But if you keep producing things that is the same old, and not putting any heart and soul into it, you're simply going to keep winding up with embarrassing box office failures one after the next. And if there is any blessing for Disney from the writer's strike and the actor's strike in 2023, it's that their 2024 slate looks very, very paltry. And fortunately for Disney, that means that they will likely minimize the number of failures that they'll have next year. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.